Gilmore. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please take this time to say a few words about the project.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm honored to join you tonight. This has been a project that has been a long time in the works, and really want to acknowledge all of the community members who have been involved. I see some of you on as participants, and had heard from Miss Nash a little bit earlier. And this area is an area of Green Valley Ranch that has taken a bit of time to get it developed. We've had the residential piece for quite a while. We've had our school partners over there as well. And it has taken a little bit for us to pull the money together in partnership with Denver Parks and Rec to be able to build out this new park at 47th and Telluride. And we're excited to see what we've got, planned in the future, and all of your engagement and ideas and time that you have spent on this is going to make sure that this is a park that is well utilized, it's safe, and that you have a great amenity within walkable or bikeable distance close to home. And so I'm very honored to be here tonight. Again, thanks to everyone's participation, and I'll hand it back over to Shelby.
Thank you so much. With that, I'm really excited to let our design team take it away, and I'm going to hand it over to Carrie. So let's
Great.
see what you
Thanks.
got.
Great. Thanks, Shelby, and thanks so much, Councilwoman Gilmore. Yeah, so my name's Carrie Lilchgren. I'm a landscape architect and associate principal at Stream Landscape Architecture. We're the consultants that have been hired to lead the design of the project. Also with Stream is Clark Wishmeyer, who's going to be speaking here soon, as well as Carrie White with Urban Play Studio. She is a specialty designer for playgrounds, and this park is going to have a very large, exciting playground. So just doing a little intro there on the design team, that members that are on this call. This right now on the screen is showing you what is to come. So this is public meeting 2. This is the second of 2 public meetings for the final design phase. If anyone that is on the call right now participated in the planning process, that occurred about 2 years ago, and there were 3 public meetings for that process. So this project, we have received so much great feedback from the community. It's just been a really robust engagement effort, and we feel like we've gotten a lot of great feedback from the community, and in particular the KIPP school, which is adjacent to our site. So this is our final meeting. The intent of this meeting is really to share with you where we are with the design and how things have developed since the last public meeting, and really where we're going from here, which is very soon going to be implementation. So we're very excited. There will be at the end a QR code and a little bit of explanation about what's going on with the naming of the park. It's not always going to be called 47th and Telluride. So we really would love participation from anyone on the call that would like to offer any ideas for the naming of the park. So that's to come, and that survey closes January 6th of 2025, I think. And then the final design, which we're working on right now, construction documents, so that the project can go out to bid, and a general contractor can be selected and start beginning their work. That design will be complete mid-year. And then through negotiations and contracting and such, we're expecting the start of construction could begin at the end of next year. So we'll move on from that slide. And so this slide is basically a summary of what we heard at the last public meeting. And I know some people on the call may not be familiar with the design of the park. I'll show you that in a minute here. These are just some key takeaways from the engagement that's occurred so far. now that we are in final design and we truly are at the end of our, public outreach process, and really just head down and focused on getting the construction documents going. A lot of what you're seeing here are some of the finer details. So as an example, we had presented this idea of misting canopies as part of the interactive water feature, and that was very well received. So that idea is definitely moving forward and taking shape, and we're really getting into the details of that now. Gliders are like a swinging bench. We're looking at that. We're still checking on the feasibility of that option. But regardless, I think what you'll see in the design is that we're really looking at fun and interactive ways for these spaces to be used by multiple types of people. And so that's just one example of that. Also, we had most recently in the last meeting, we really wanted to verify the interest that we had been receiving all along the way, that a community garden was desired. And we did receive that input that that is definitely something that people want, and that is part of the plan. And then we also, especially given the fact that our park site's large, but it's next to a school. And so we really want the design to work well with how the site is used by the school as well, so that it's not two separate uses, but there's a good complementary use. And so we'll show you a bit more about the design that has evolved on the east side of the site, nearest to the school, for a youth-focused area for active use and parkour, which we're really excited about the design and how that's evolving. And then lastly, as part of our picnic area, we had posed the question about what types of games people would like to do, such as cornhole, horseshoes, and bocce, and cornhole was the #1 favorite. So that is part of the design moving forward. And then for a couple of the play features, Carrie, I'll turn over to you for a minute just to explain a few things about how the playground design has evolved since our last meeting.
Okay, great. So with the playground, just a little background on the overall layout. We are designing an age-separated playground. So there will be an area more focused with the equipment for the older kids, 5 to 12, and then a separate area for 2 to 5. Movement between those areas is very fluid, but it can be safer and it can be easier for caregivers if the equipment has a little bit of separation to it. And so we took input on some of the equipment that went in there, but we also have a swing area. We have we're planning a couple of discovery paths and an imagination play area, as well as a mound with a slide. And from the first public meeting, as part of this process in the survey, out of a couple options on the 5 to 12-year-old structure for the 5 to 12-year-old kids, this net climber, very unique, very airy, which we're calling the cloud climber, was a strong favorite from the input we received. And so we're continuing with that. And then we asked for input on, for those of you who are, did the survey or were in attendance to that meeting, we asked, would you like to have a themed play structure for the younger kids, 2 to 5, either an animal or a bird or an insect? And the dragonfly was the favored among that group. And which has been a great challenge because it's not very typical that you have a dragonfly play structure. And so we're working with a company that's going to custom do one for this park, which is going to be then, one of a kind for your space. And then we asked for input on there's a lot of different swing seat types that are available now, which is great. Can meet a lot of different needs for kids' developmental and social needs. And the top vote getters for the swing seats were as you're seeing here, the Nest group. It's just a large platform that several kids can use. You can use it independently or several groups. And then an adaptive seat, which is for any kid, again, can use it, but really great for kids who need more support as they're sitting in the swing seat. We'll have a few other options, but these are for sure being included in the design as we progress. The other main category for the playground that we asked for is what accessible play features would you like to see? And there were several options, but these were the top vote getters. Wide embankment slide, which is a slide on a mound. The play glider, which has kind of a back and forth motion to it, and wheelchairs and mobility devices can wheel onto it. And then the spinner, a group spinner, which is also flush with the ground, so great for kids or users who are using mobility devices. We'll be doing several other things. We've just thought about accessibility throughout the whole playground. So these are not the only items, but we're including the wide embankment slide and the spinner going forward and not the play glider. These are the elements that actually take up quite a bit of space and budget. And so currently that's what fits into the program of the playground. And the spinner, we just have seen our experience with it in parks. It gets highly used, and so we chose a couple of the elements from our experience that we felt would be great playability and quality of play going forward.
Great, thanks, Carrie. And we'll dive a little bit more into a little zoom in on the play design here in a minute. So that was the input we received on specific questions we posed to you. And then at that last public meeting, there were a few questions that came up from the group. I'll just touch on the main takeaways. This first one's about dog park. This question we get every time. This park was not slated for off-leash dog park programming. There's a larger study done by Denver Parks and Rec for, which is the dog park master plan. And this site wasn't selected for that. So that wasn't originally part of the intent. And so it's not moving forward in the plan. Large water feature pool. We don't have a pool. There is a new one at the rec center. But we do have a water feature. As you'll see, it's very interactive. It has a lot of mist and elements. It really, we believe, strikes a great balance between a lot of play value, a lot of interest in different ways to interact with the water, but also balancing that with a need for sustainability with water use. So we feel we've addressed that, and we'll share that with you. And a couple questions on trails. This one's about biking. And then one of the later ones there is about jogging. There's a wide network of trails of different types, trails that are paved and intend to be plowed, snow plowed, so that they can be used year round. It's a great way for people to get out and be active in the winter months, and also soft surface trails that joggers tend to like. There are a couple walking loops that we've intentionally designed to provide a 1/4 mile and 1/3 mile loops. So it is a large park, and we believe these different types of trails will be used by a wide variety of people. And then event and gathering spaces, there are a lot of them. We have a large central pavilion, which can be used for informal, like group picnic, but also possibly for informal events. We have a couple picnic shelters, and then various areas where we have picnic tables, as well as outdoor classroom space, which directly engages the school, as well as just smaller, more intimate areas down by the drainage channel, a bit more in the natural zone where people can sit and have a smaller group gathering. So lots of options there. And then the last question is just about pickleball or tennis courts. Again, those two uses, they were actually presented during the first public meeting where we were presenting all possible options for programming, and they didn't rank very high, and so those have not moved forward. So go to the next slide. So here's the plan. This is a color rendered version of the plan that we are developing, as I say, into more construction documents. And so for those of you that aren't familiar with this plan yet, I'll do a very brief summary, which is that what came out of the planning phase was really the community wanted, a lot of the programming, amenities, and activity to be really centralized into what we call the community hub, and that's what you're seeing on the north side of the site. And so that primarily is the large event and gathering space with the pavilion, the playground and the interactive water feature all kind of working together in a high activity zone. But then along with that, there's the broader site of the multi-use sports field, which can be programmed for many uses. It's not intended to be regulation play, but just a large open area where a lot of different field sports can be played. On the east side there, we'll talk more about that. That's a basketball court and the parkour area, the youth focused area that's going to work really well with the school. And then in the upper right is the community garden, and that will be able to be accessed off of 47th there. So we're excited about that. And then down along the south side of the site is the drainage channel that we are doing a slight meander little area there where you see, and it's real straight, and then it does a little jog upward. That's going to add a lot of interest. It is a small drainage channel. There's not open water seen in it typically, but we heard in the planning phase that people really wanted to have that connection to nature, and so that provides that, and that's where we have a lot of our soft surface trails and kind of more smaller gathering areas, boulder outcroppings and such. And we will be planting that with more cottonwoods. There's currently cottonwoods in that zone. So that kind of gives you a little bit of the lay of the land. And then lastly, in the upper right is just a diagram of the different trail systems. We have our kind of neighborhood connector, which runs east-west, and that will really help connect the existing neighborhood of single-family homes, which surrounds the site on 3 sides. But we also have a lot of development coming on the west side of Telluride, which will be more dense. And so this kind of connector path will be pretty important, we feel. And also the other walking loops and trails that I mentioned earlier. So I will just add just a couple of things in the design that have developed since our last public meeting. We're now getting into the design of lighting and safety related to that lighting. And so about a dozen or so pole lights, they're strategically going to be placed along the main paths and the main activity areas. So that was a concern that had been brought up even in our first few meetings we had with the public. And then again, the parkour area, the design of that has really evolved a lot since our last meeting. So we'll share that with you as well. And from there, we can just maybe dive in. I think the next one is play. So Carrie, send it back to you. Oh, or maybe this was Clark. Clark's going to talk about inspiration for the character of the design and site.
Yes. So early on, the design team had this idea of, it being in the clouds, and working with the Denver side of things. This idea of big sky country really became apparent. A lot of great views to the mountains right now. Some of that development is coming up on the west, so we're really trying to understand where and how tall everything is to try and maximize those views still. Also trying to work in, the riparian zones close near the drainage channel where you get a little bit more water in those cottonwoods that you see in this area, as well as trying to preserve some areas that are just that really nice open space grass where all you see is that sea of grass in front of you and then wide open skies above you. And then not only taking inspiration from the geography of that, but the local wildlife. I think wildlife has been spotted on site between just birds flying overhead. A fox lives on site right now, and other prairie inspired ideas. So this is zooming in on the community hub area. This is where a lot of the programming is happening. So I'll talk just a little about the overall layout of this and then hand it off to Carrie White to discuss the play a little bit more in depth. So kind of starting from the bottom of your screen there is just the top of the great lawn area where a lot of passive and active recreation can happen, with a nice terrace overlook and central pavilion that really gives those expansive views to the majority of the south side of the park there. Just above that, you'll see the water feature. Starting from the bottom and moving up, you see some white structures being the misting canopies. Just above that will be some misting poles, and then at the very top, there are some water tables that you'll see in the perspective rendering that allow trickle flows to come through for kids to put their hands in. We've kind of programmed this to where a lot of the most active zone is to the left side of the screen with the play features that Carrie White will talk about here in just a minute. With that water feature being hopefully something that everyone can enjoy, whether it's kids cooling off or just someone running or biking through the park, stopping to cool off for a second. And then obviously that central pavilion and the Bosque with on the right side of the screen being a place of more passive area for people to hang out and trying to really let a lot of different activities happen in this community hub that came about during the master plan that we heard from you all you really wanted. So with that, I will hand it off to Carrie White to talk a little bit about the play.
As mentioned, you're seeing now that the age separation between the two to 5 playground area, which is pretty central, and then the 5 to 12, with the 2 to 5 having a large play mound with some fun features on it and this oversized dragonfly play structure. So it'll be fun for the kids to play around with that scale of this giant dragonfly. And there's some other insects that we're playing around with that will be on the play mound, including a tunnel. And then in the 5 to 12 area, you see the net cloud structure. And then in between, there's some little squares and there's a circle, and those are like the spinners and these trampoline bouncers, which are shared by, we anticipate, all ages. A nice little space tucked in it centrally, but it's in the gray area, and it has picnic tables, will be a great gathering area for caregivers and to park your strollers and things like that. And then have the kids either, they can go to the water play or into the playground. And then another area that is between the 2 to 5 area by the dragonfly and in between the water play is a little discovery area. It'll have a textured path, it'll have a playhouse and a little table and chairs. What we see is more of an imagination, a place for more passive activities for those kids that prefer that, and to use their imagination a little bit more. The swing area is kind of up and to the left of the 5 to 12, again, a variety of swing seats, and to be used by, all ages 2 to 12. And then to the far left, there's several mounds being created in the park, and we're utilizing this one to bring a pathway up, and there'll be a wide concrete embankment slide for use by all the kids. And we think that'll be a really high energy area where the kids can do play circuits and up log scramble or boulder scrambles on either side of the slide, or using that walkway, which will be accessible, and then down the slide. And something else that is created is that with using vegetation in the landscape is really surrounding this area and focusing everybody towards this community hub, but giving that feeling of the natural prairie feel and plant materials, offering shade. And then we are also hoping to do some small sculptures, bronze sculptures that will be little discovery elements for the kids that will be native animals also of this area. And I think that other thing, maybe Clark, I don't know if you pointed it out, but the picnic area too, which will serve, both the play lawn and the playground, and will be another nice gathering space for this area.
So moving on, we have a perspective rendering to try and give you a sense more of what that space is going to feel like in person. I'll start from the bottom of the screen again. That's the overlook terrace and central pavilion with, just great views and hopefully an area people can come and just hang out. Just to the above that is the water feature I was talking about. There's a more zoomed in version, so I'll get into that more with a rendering here in just a bit. To the right of that is the Bosque with the picnic tables and umbrellas. We heard loud and clear that shade was super important here. And so obviously we're trying to get as many trees in, but trees don't provide immediate shade a lot of times. So that's why you're seeing, picnic shelters, the central pavilion, these individual picnic tables with umbrellas to really try and incorporate that in so that it can be used day one. Just behind that bosque with the trees and picnic tables is the community garden. And community garden goes right up along 47th, which is the north side of the park. And then on the left side of the screen is the play area with a lot of the cool stuff Carrie White was talking about. And I say Carrie White because we have two Carries, so I'm just used to identifying who I'm talking about. So apologies, Carrie. But the dragonfly climbing structure here, the 2 to 5 area with the mounds and tunnels. And then as you move left, this is the big cloud climber, which will hopefully give the impression of these, grass leaves really reaching up to the sky and like you're immersed under the prairie. And then just behind that being the swing set. This is looking west. You can see the mountains in the background a little bit. And starting from the left side of the screen is that terrace and pavilion, central pavilion. The Bosque with the picnic tables with umbrellas is to the right. And then kind of centered in the middle is the water feature in the foreground here. And then some of the play structures starting to appear in the background there. There's a really nice grade change between this community hub area kind of sitting on top that leads down to the central lawn, which hopefully gives it a really wide open space feeling to where there's just great views no matter where you are in the park. And this right here is that perspective rendering I was talking about with the water feature. Right at the bottom of the screen, you can see we have 2 water tables. There will be hand pumps that's super interactive for the kids to actually pump the water out and allow for trickle flows that kids can splash their hands in, and those all go down a little channel that leads further in. Throughout that channel, you have boulders that have misting elements incorporated to it. So the kids really feel like they're immersed in the mist and have a great time. Behind that, we have concrete precast Adirondack chairs. And with those chairs, we're having ground misters so that hopefully caregivers can cool off as they're watching the kids. And then this structure in the back being the misting canopy to where hopefully anyone can just come and cool off for a few minutes on a hot summer day. Then looking over to the left, you can see some of those play features again. This rendering is really trying to show, the natural side of things. So in the background, just to orient you, you can see the central pavilion in that terrace right here, the great lawn stretching out before that. And then this south side of the park is really focusing in on that natural area and trying to preserve some of that prairie feeling with utilizing grades, as you can see with the Great Mound here, that will have great views of the rest of the park and down that drainage channel, as well as some views to the west to the mountains. And then really trying to bring in native grasses and trees to bring this drainage channel and natural areas to life with boulder steps and boulder crossings and soft surface trails along the channel that make for great just walking loops to enjoy the nature or great running loops as well. Like Carrie was saying earlier in the presentation, the parkour area is something that's evolved a lot since the last time we were able to talk to you all. So I wanted to circle back on that. The parkour really came about because with the junior high and middle school, the junior high and the elementary school right next door, You do get some of those kids that are in the early teenage years that, they might be too old for the more typical traditional play structures like we have in the community hub, but we still want to encourage them to, get out, move, be active, hang out with your friends, and get some exercise in. And that's really where this area started to develop, and came across that there is a large parkour community here in Denver. And for years, they've been, wanting to see some outdoor space. And so it's really exciting to be able to work on that with Denver on this project. So just to give you a little orientation, this perspective rendering, there are two main levels to this, sitting about 2 feet apart as far as elevation gain. The upper area here is more focused on running, jumping, and vaulting over things. That's going to be safety. All of this is safety surfacing, but this will probably be poured in place rubber in its current design. That just allows for, better traction and better movement. Then this lower area here you can see is more of the EWF, or engineered wood fibers, that you see on a lot of typical playgrounds that cushion falls really well. And that lower level is really focused on more bars and vertical surfaces to swing and climb on. This view is really nice because it gives you a little orientation as to where it sits next to the basketball court. These two seemed like pretty compatible uses, so really nice to have both of these things adjacent to the school to really try and blend that boundary to where it feels like those compatible and complementary spaces that Carrie was alluding to. And then just to revisit a little bit on the next steps, obviously we're meeting here for the second time on the design phase of this project today. Here in a bit, we'll hear from someone on the naming committee for the new park, and that survey again closes on January 6th. Final design completion is slated for the middle of this upcoming year, 2025, with anticipated construction starting, the end of 2025. With that, we just wanted to open it up to any questions and comments. We're going to tackle any questions and comments first, and then hear from the person from the naming committee. Also wanted to provide that, if you're mulling this over later and thinking about it, and you have a question or something that pops up that you want to know, Shelby Batala is the Parks and Recreation Project Manager, and you can reach out via that if there's something after this meeting. With that, I'm just going to flip back to the plan rendering so everyone can kind of reorient themselves, and might be a little easier to talk through any questions or comments.
Thanks, Clark. We do have a question from Annie Kanabasi regarding the setback from Telluride. What's the distance?
So I guess a little clarification.
How much space is there at Telluride, or is it right up against the sidewalk?
So I can walk through what we have here is the existing sidewalk that runs along Telluride, and then this portion we will make a little bit bigger to tie into the Derby lateral trail that comes up from the south side and then cuts over Telluride. We then have a native grass and small berm, so just a small little couple-foot hill to try and provide some buffer between Telluride and the more programmed areas where people will be. So I would say the picnic and games turf lawn from the edge of that over to this is at least, it's probably about 50 feet.
Yeah, so I was thinking 50.
50.
It might, maybe the question is literally like, is that the road we're seeing in the aerial? And that is. So the property, our park is going to come right up to Telluride.
Thank you. That did answer my question. Thank you.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you for the question.
And actually, Anika Nabasi, while you are unmuted, can you ask your question about coordinated use between DPS and DPR? There is a school right next to the site, but you are referring to another school in the vicinity.
Right, yeah, so, excuse me, just wondering, like, what is that priority is, as far as who gets the priority on use of the park? Is it Parks and Recs? Is it the school? Is it the general community? Who would have that priority when it comes to making use of that community space? I heard just a lot about, being in coordination with the school, as far as being able to use the park and the classroom spaces and all that. So just trying to figure out, does DPR have, I guess, priority? Say that there's sporting events for Parks and Recs. The particular place I'm speaking of is Omar D. Blair. They're not able to use that park for any of their after school programming. So just trying to figure out, with this particular space and the school, how that coordinated effort actually will work out.
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I believe that this would be purely public, permitted areas. So I can look deeper into that and get you a better answer. Um, as far as coordination with the school, I think we've been working closely with them throughout the whole design process just to understand what the needs of the community are and, just to ensure that there are enough amenities for um, the public to use. So the public use of the park would be the first priority. Um, so that everyone can use the fields and um, shelters, etc. So, but I'll get more information on the permitting, and um, if you wouldn't mind shooting me an email, I can respond to that directly.
Thank you.
And Shelby, can you put your email in the chat?
Yes. Well, yeah, we'll do.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and also just to clarify, yeah, the public use is the primary use for the park. It can be available to the school, but it is not part of the school's regular use. Clark, maybe you could just hover your cursor or something over the outdoor classroom. It is one area that's it's well situated for an existing gate on the fence that separates the two properties, but it's there aren't multiple classrooms. It's just in that one area.
Thank you, Carrie. So Christian has a multi-part question. How long will construction take? How long will it be until the park is complete? And then the second part of his question is, the play structures seem to be made for teenagers and younger. Are there opportunities for intergenerational play?
I'll answer the construction completion. I think we have a 12-month anticipated construction time allotted to build this park. We're going to be in design for a couple more months. So, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to be closer to summer of 2026, right? That we actually are in construction. Is that right, Hannah?
It should be towards the end of 2025 or beginning of 2026.
Okay, perfect. So,
yep. Yeah,
thank you.
and I think, yeah, you will see a little bit of maybe, some potential fencing or some dirt piles start to build up and stuff, but the true construction kickoff is planned to be the end of 2025. So the year will kind of start from there.
And then to answer the questions about the intergenerational play, maybe Carrie White would like to take that question.
Sure.
It's a little more play related.
And I might have I think maybe if Christian might explain a little bit more, but I would say that program elements and the design are currently reflecting the input that we've received so far. And was there something specific that you consider more intergenerational play? I know that their stream is still looking for gliders, which are more adult type swings, and any of this is certainly rated. And I try out all the play equipment all the time. And then there's the lawn games like cornhole and things like that. But is there a type of intergenerational play that you've seen elsewhere that you were looking for or hoping for?
Well, it's not that I'm suggesting the equipment, but I do think that it's important to consider that, we adults and even elder adults would like to play potentially with kids. There's an important element to just the sharing of like heritage and laughter and active living. So, but when you talked about the swings in particular, right? You talked about all ages, but then said 12, right? Are you going to make swings
Oh,
that are
I
for
can
all
explain that.
body
Yes.
types, all ages? Where are
Yes.
there opportunities for what you already have,
Yep.
designed to integrate all ages? Like you said, well, you said originally all ages, and then I only heard until teenagers. And so,
You are correct. That's a great question, and I can clarify. So the industry of play equipment, they categorize play equipment as 2 to 5 and then 5 to 12. But and that's just for developmentally, what they see is safety, and there's some equipment that they wouldn't recommend for a 2-year-old. And so that's just some those are the ages that are used in the industry. Does it limit a 13-year-old or a 15-year-old or a 22-year-old or me from using the equipment? It does not. And so that is such a good point, and nobody's ever pointed that out to me before. But it is an industry standard, but in general, it's just a recommendation on age. And something that I love about that big cloud structure is it's big and it's tall, and I think it would be pretty awesome that an awesome piece for adults to get on there and play with the kids, or just a hangout space in a time where the park is not as crowded, and you might get some folks on there. But does that help clarify that I was using the terms I think that the play equipment vendors use as recommendations, but it's more of a developmental thing, but it doesn't limit anybody from using the equipment.
well, and then okay, then I think that I have to pair the age with ability.
Great.
Right.
Yep.
Also, the ability, like, are there all ability or swings that can be for all abilities of physical structure? Because we're talking about older people, they don't
Yep.
have the same ability as maybe the recommendations are for healthy or able bodies, right? And so I just want to see, is there a way that based upon what you already have, can we integrate age and ability?
So for the swings in particular, I think that if we can find the gliders that will if there's a product that's available that would withstand the public use, those would definitely reach all the way through all types of elderly and seniors. And again, there's a whole variety of types of swings, from the more supportive seats to actually a seat where an adult faces a child. And those groups, the big disc swing, I think can be used. And if you think about it, where I know a lot of families where they might have a child of different ability, but you'll see a sibling who will sit and hug a child, or they have a sibling that just doesn't have the ability and the support. So again, that's where I think all the variety of the swing seats really come into play by accommodating all ages and all abilities, because they're really versatile. And you just have to think about them in a different way. Great. Thanks for that question. It was a really good one.
And I'll just throw in there that I think water play also meets that intergenerational, that anyone can approach it however they want. So
Oh, thank
Uh,
you all.
there's a question from Stella about the location of the water fountain and toilets, and I think would it be, Clark, could you show on the screen with your cursor maybe like where we're planning to locate the portalets? Those are being,
Yeah, you can zoom in maybe a little bit, just it's unless everyone can see that. It's a little bit
Not
in the
sure I can
right-hand
zoom in
area.
without taking it out of presentation mode.
Oh, okay, never mind.
So I'll just kind of move my mouse wildly.
Here,
Yeah,
right here.
we're planning to have the portalets in that area somewhere. We're currently working with the operations team to figure out where exactly is the best placement for them, but right now they're going to be adjacent to the playground area, probably near that mound. And then the water fountains, those right now, if we're able to provide as part of the budget, I imagine would end up in the same area.
It's close by. See, there's a structure there. We need that structure for the mechanical equipment for the water feature. And so we're hoping to locate, if we can do the drinking fountain or bottle filler, that be located in that general area. It seems like a good spot, given the utilities and mechanical use nearby, and it's also kind of near the water in play. So
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Stella. Next question is, I know you mentioned trees for shade, but what will happen to the larger trees that exist near the natural stream? Uh, Clark, do you want to address that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are going to try and preserve as many as possible. There may be one or two that have to get removed just for the alignment of trails or that meander that we talked about along the drainage way, but the vast majority of them will be protected in place and be preserved.
And then to add on to that, the next part of the question is, will there be an adequate amount of trees planted for shade considering the size of the park? So I think do we have a number of trees that we're adding? Do
It's
you know
in
off the
flux a
top of your
little
head?
bit, but 200 plus.
200 plus trees will be planted.
yeah, and what
New
we're seeing
trees.
here is representative of what we have in our plan right now, I believe. So
Yep.
just for this area, but just to give you an idea.
And then the next question from Christian is, would the community garden be part of the Denver Urban Garden Network? I believe so. I think we just got confirmation recently that it would be part of Doug. So that is a yes at this point. Um, then Chris, Urias, would you like to ask your question now? You just jump in whenever
Hey,
you,
so I
oh,
shared
hey.
my link with my with some calendar invites. So this Chris Udias might be somebody that I invited. So I invite whoever uh came in as Chris Udias, please ask your question.
Chris 2.0. Well, please chime in whenever you want. I'll move to the next one. Christian, we also have a lot of active older adults, 60 plus, that use this space for daily exercise. Are there any areas that could be included to encourage body movement for them walking outside of walking paths? Um, I, uh, yeah, that's a great view.
I'll
Depending
chime.
upon, you want to answer back? I have a
Oh,
couple ideas, but go ahead.
yeah. I think one of the really cool things about parkour is that a lot of this setup lends itself to being able to make this your own fitness station. A lot of these bars can be pull-ups. You can do dips on some of these lower platforms or step ups. It's very compatible with flexible fitness use of the space as well. And thankfully, we're providing two different types of surfacing. This one up on the top, the blue, is a really nice rubber surface that is easy to walk across and a little bit easier than the EWF, which is those wood chips. Carrie, do you have something?
Yeah, I'll just add that in addition to the paths, something we haven't touched on is is the topography. The site, maybe you'd look at it and think it doesn't have much topography, but we really have studied the earthwork and looked at the grading, and how we might incorporate mounds and berms and lookout points, and those are related to potential views. Even with the development coming on the west side of Telluride, we do think there are some key viewpoints, especially down south towards Pikes Peak. And so we're looking at how there can be little inclines, if you will. And again, this is depending upon ability level, but to get some steps in, vertical steps as opposed to just straight on paths. So that's another opportunity. And alternatively, there's also paths and steps that go down towards the drainage. So there could be that up down movement as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here for people of all ages to get outside and get exercise and enjoy the space.
I think that's the end of our questions in the chat, at least. Certainly, if
think
there
I
are
just
additional
saw
questions.
someone, the other Chris, pop up.
Yes,
Oh.
hi, that's me.
There we go.
Yeah, hi, this is Christian 2.0. Hi everybody, my name is Annie, and I don't know what was happening. I just clicked on the link and it gave me that name. So what can I do?
No.
But I do have a question for you guys. I don't know if I missed the information, but I was just wondering, like, if environmentally friendly tactics were used during the planning of this park. For example, putting out trash cans made of plastics or reusable materials, or maybe things that teach about the environment, maybe educating children about the environment with some pictures or stuff like that.
Great question. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity actually here for interpretation, and that might be one of the last layers, if you will, that we look at in terms of the education piece and how signage might help. Clark, maybe I'll just have you kind of explain a little bit of something we didn't share that much on, was the enhanced nature experience area, and how we're very purposefully designing that for different kind of habitats and little microecology, if you will, to happen in that zone.
Yeah, absolutely. So this area right here, enhanced nature experience, just to the right and down of the Great Lawn, is our, enhanced area. And so the idea behind that is that's going to have some specialty seed mixes, as well as native shrubs and other things to try and help support a little bit more diverse ecosystem. And I think that paired along with keeping the drainage area where you do have some moisture that allows for those riparian species that need a little bit more water than our typical, dry upland species, will provide a really nice framework for experiential aspects for the human side of things, but also habitat, food, and other things for the local wildlife, as well as plant diversity.
I like that, and I appreciate the answer. I feel like it's a really important point, and I just wanted to know if that's actually a priority during this. Of course, it is a park. Of course, we have trees, and of course, we have things that help with that. But also, I was just wondering stuff like that. So I like that. I like that, and I actually appreciate this information and just you guys being open to us as a community about the process and the planning. Thank you.
And yeah, thank
Absolutely.
you for your question. It is a high priority for us. I've been
One other
hearing that from the
thing-
public all along.
One other thing I'll point out is, we really tried to minimize the use of irrigated turf that's just grass. I mean, you'll see up here, these kind of lighter green with some yellow tinges. All of this is native area. So really trying to only use turf grass where it's going to get high use for, active and passive recreation, and then everything else leaving as native grass to try and preserve as much as we can, or preserve just like biodiversity and habitat as much as we can.
And in fact, there's actually a lot of high quality vegetation on this site, especially on the south side. And so we were really being careful in our design, limiting earthwork in areas that do have that high quality vegetation, so we don't disturb it and don't affect, especially tree coverage, but also the ground plane and the planting understory, if you will. So we're very much trying to preserve what is there in high quality.
Thank you guys so much for the questions. I think we also, before we get too tight, well, we're running a little over, not overtime yet, but I do want to give Stella a chance to present the naming committee survey. So Stella, if you are here, please take it away.
Thank you. 2 months ago, a committee was formed to help ensure that the community could name this park something that's meaningful for us. And also while getting the support on the process that Denver Parks and Recreation requires in their naming policy. The committee is made up of 7 people. Last month, we put out a survey together, ideas of potential names for the park, and we had some great options to come through. We decided that these 7 names, Telluride Park, Fox Run Park, Prairie Land Park, Big Sky Park, Sunset Park, Chinle and Sioux Park, and Amanche Power Park would go into a public survey where people can rank them rather than just vote for one. We need you to take this quick survey now and to share with your friends and family. Post on your social media and so forth throughout the month. Kiara will post the link in the chat. Please share the flyer specifically on the naming. This should be on the project's website. The committee will meet again in January to review the survey results, pick a name, and get clarity on the next steps toward formal approval of the name through collecting signatures, going to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and then to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella.
You're welcome.
I think that concludes our programming for tonight. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your participation throughout the project and tonight as well. We do have a hand up though. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi,
Other
sorry.
Chris.
Sorry, yes, I had one more question. I was typing in the chat, but I think I did a direct message. I was wondering about that southwest parklet portion, that new part. Will that have a design by the end of this design phase, or will it have to be designed at a later date for that future opportunity and design build later? Or will it have a preliminary design for this end
I
of the
think
year?
what you're seeing on the screen is our preliminary design, which is, a sitting area and a connection to the Derby Trail, but it is very conceptual right now. So I think it's difficult to say where we aren't sure if we're going to be able to incorporate this into the construction of this phase, but um, yeah, I think to answer your question, I, I want to keep it. We want to keep it as an option, but we're not sure if we can do it yet. I don't-
Not fully committed. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, there is a potential for that to go to a phase 2 of construction once we've completed the primary park. And so we kind of have to wait and see how a few variables shake out to have a better understanding and idea of if we can incorporate that now or in the future.
Mhm,
And is that based off of funds, or is
mhm.
that based off of okay?
Yeah, it is funding related.
Mhm.
Got it. Thank you.
And then I think the last question from Christian, will the sidewalk be widened to match what was recently poured along Telluride? I think what you're seeing on the top right, yeah, the blue lines are our sidewalks, right? So um, where the cursor is right now it was widened to connect to that Derby lateral trail. And Clark, can you remind me if, like, I don't think we're widening other sidewalks, right? I think they're gonna remain the width that they are. Is that accurate?
Correct. This is
Okay.
the only area that we widened. The idea being that this will be kind of the widest trail in the park, and it will connect kind of the east side over to the trail. And that with so many trails on the north side of the park here, that would help distribute those, I guess, concentration of pedestrians or bicyclists. And then I saw one more that I don't think we got to. Speaking of the fox that's on the site, we don't know for sure, but we think the fox lives on this south side here. And since this parklet is most likely, it might be a future opportunity. And then while we did color this, we're not actually disturbing that. We were just trying to show the extents of the park. So we think the fox is gonna, not be directly disturbed.
Yeah, he does live there. Okay, thank you, Christian.
Okay, perfect.
Good to know. Thank you. Okay, well, my information's in the chat. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. And thank you so much. This has been a really wonderful process. Have a wonderful night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
And don't forget to do the naming survey.
Yeah,
That's
vote
right.
for the name.
Yes, we
Tell
will.
your friends
Thank
and
you.
family. Thank you.
Will do.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank
you.
you,
Have a good night.
everyone. Good
Bye.
night.
Thank you.